3 months. That's how long Zafina had been gone. And every single night felt like an eternity to Jihyuk. He stood in the greenhouse he had built, surrounded by roses that were finally, miraculously, blooming under the UV-filtered lights she had bought him. Red roses, white roses, pink roses. Every color except the deep crimson of blood, because he couldn't bear to look at that shade without thinking of the night he had almost lost her. He touched one of the petals gently, marveling at how something so delicate could survive in his world of darkness. Just like her. Just like Zafina, who had looked at a 300-year-old vampire and decided he was worth saving. His phone buzzed. A text message. His heart, dead for 3 centuries, somehow managed to skip a beat when he saw her name. Landing in Seoul tomorrow night. Don't clean the guest room. I'm staying in yours. Jihyuk stared at the message, reading it over and over, afraid that if he blinked it would disappear like so many dreams he'd had over the past 3 months. She was coming back. She had actually chosen to come back. He typed a response with fingers that trembled slightly. Are you sure? You've had time to think. Time to realize. Her reply came immediately. I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything. See you tomorrow, vampire boy. Have the roses ready. Despite everything, the loneliness, the fear, the certainty that she would change her mind, Jihyuk smiled. Then he got to work. If Zafina Mensa was coming home, he was going to make sure it was a home worth coming back to. The next evening, Jihyuk stood at the mansion's entrance, watching the driveway with an intensity that would have frightened anyone who didn't know him. He had dressed carefully. Black suit, black shirt, the same outfit he'd worn the first day she arrived, because he wanted her to see how far they'd come from that cold, hostile meeting. The mansion was spotless. The guest room was prepared despite her text, just in case she changed her mind about staying in his room. And the greenhouse was filled with more roses than he had managed to grow in 300 years, all of them blooming in defiant beauty. Headlights appeared through the fog, and his dead heart somehow managed to race. The car pulled up, and then she was there. Zafina stepped out, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in braids, looking tired from the long flight but more beautiful than he remembered. She looked at the mansion, then at him, and her face broke into a smile that could have powered the sun. Hi, she said, walking toward him. Hi, he replied, and his voice came out rougher than intended. How's your mother? Recovering. The surgery was successful. She's going to be fine. Zafina stopped a few feet away from him, and suddenly the air between them felt charged with everything unsaid over 3 months of separation. I told her about you. Jihyuk's eyes widened. You told her you're in love with a vampire? I told her I'm in love with someone complicated. Someone who's been hurt before and doesn't trust easily. Someone who thinks he doesn't deserve happiness but is wrong about that. Zafina took another step closer. I didn't mention the vampire part. That seemed like a second visit conversation. Practical? Jihyuk said. And then they both laughed, the tension breaking like a dam. Before you find out what happens next, make sure you've watched part 1. The link is in the description below. And if you're loving this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're about to get to the most emotional part of their journey, and you don't want to miss it. Now let's continue. Zafina closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him, and Jihyuk held her like she was the only real thing in his eternal existence. She was warm where he was cold, alive where he was dead, and she chose him anyway. The miracle of that almost broke him. I missed you, she whispered against his chest. I missed you more than I thought possible, he admitted. 3 months felt like 3 centuries. She pulled back to look at him, her hands cupping his face. Then let's not waste any more time. Show me the roses. He led her to the greenhouse, and when she saw what he had created, she gasped. The entire space was filled with blooming roses, their scent heavy in the air, their colors vibrant under the special lights. It looked like a garden from a fairy tale, beautiful and impossible. You did it, Zafina said, walking among the roses with wonder in her eyes. You actually did it. You did it, Jihyuk corrected. You gave me the lights. You gave me hope. You made me believe I could create something beautiful instead of just existing in the dark. Zafina turned to face him, and there were tears in her eyes. Happy tears, he thought. He hoped. I love you, Min Jihyuk. I spent 3 months in Lagos thinking about this. About us. About what it means to choose this life. And every single day, I woke up knowing I wanted to come back here. To you. I love you too, Jihyuk said, the words coming easier now. But Zafina, you need to understand what you're choosing. I can't give you daylight. I can't give you children. I can't give you a normal life where you grow old surrounded by grandchildren and die peacefully in your sleep. I don't want normal, Zafina said firmly. I want you. I want midnight conversations and centuries of learning everything there is to know about you. I want to travel the world at night and see everything through your eyes. I want forever, Jihyuk. You're forever. He stared at her, and for the first time in 300 years, he let himself truly hope. Forever is a long time. Then we better get started. He kissed her then, properly, deeply, with all the longing and love and fear and hope that he had carried for 3 months. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body pressed against his, and for a moment, the world consisted of nothing but the two of them in a greenhouse full of impossible roses. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless. Well, she was breathless. He didn't technically need to breathe. Zafina smiled up at him. So, about staying in your room. Are you sure? Jihyuk asked. We can take this slowly. I can. Jihyuk, she interrupted. I just flew halfway around the world to be with you. I think we're past slowly. He laughed, a sound of pure joy that he hadn't made in centuries. Then let me show you your new home. They spent the evening together, talking about everything that had happened during their separation. Zafina told him about her mother's surgery, about the relief of seeing her healthy again, about finishing her degree remotely and planning to transfer to a night program when she returned to Seoul. Jihyuk told her about the preparations he had made, about setting up accounts in her name, about ensuring she would never have to worry about money again. You don't have to do that, Zafina protested. I can work. I can. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, Jihyuk said gently. Let me take care of you. Let me give you the security I couldn't give Mina all those years ago. Zafina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You still think about her. Every day, Jihyuk admitted. But not the way I used to. I used to think about her with regret and guilt and the constant ache of loss. Now when I think about her, I remember the happy times. I remember that she taught me how to love. And that love is what allows me to love you now. She's part of my past, Zafina. But you're my present and my future. Good answer, Zafina said, smiling through tears. You've had 3 months to practice that, haven't you? 3 months and about 1,000 drafts, Jihyuk confessed, and they both laughed. As the night deepened, they found themselves back in Jihyuk's bedroom, a place Zafina had cleaned many times but never really seen as his personal space. It was surprisingly simple for someone so wealthy. A large bed with black silk sheets, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes in dozens of languages, and paintings on the walls that she now recognized as his own work. This one is new, she said, pointing to a painting of a woman standing in a greenhouse surrounded by roses. The woman was her, captured in loving detail, her face lit with joy as she looked at the flowers. I painted it from memory, Jihyuk said softly. Every night after you left, I would paint you, trying to hold onto the way you looked when you were happy, trying to convince myself that you might come back. Zafina turned to him, her eyes serious. I'm back. I'm really back, Jihyuk. And I'm not leaving again. But I need to know, what does forever actually mean? Do you want to turn me? Make me like you? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Jihyuk sat down on the edge of the bed, and after a moment, Zafina joined him. I've thought about it, he admitted. Every day since you left, I've thought about it. The idea of having you with me for eternity, never having to watch you age and die, never having to lose you the way I lost Mina. It's tempting, more than tempting. But Zafina prompted. But I won't curse you to this existence. I won't damn you to centuries of drinking blood and hiding from the sun and watching everyone you love die while you remain frozen in time. That's not love, Zafina. That's selfishness. What if I want it? Zafina asked. What if I'm choosing it? Freely, with full knowledge of what it means. Jihyuk looked at her, his expression pained. You're 24 years old. You haven't lived enough of your life to make that choice. Ask me again in 10 years, 20 years. If you still want forever after you've experienced what it means to be truly human, to feel the sun on your face, to have children if you want them, to grow and change in age, then I'll consider it. That's not fair, Zafina said, tears forming in her eyes. You're asking me to fall more in love with you for 20 years and then watch myself start to age while you stay young forever. You're asking me to feel the distance growing between us with every birthday. I know, Jihyuk said, his own voice breaking. I know it's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. But I love you too much to take your humanity away before you've really experienced what it means to be human. They sat in silence for a long moment, holding hands, both knowing that this was the fundamental tension of their relationship. Love separated by time, by mortality, by the unbridgeable gap between human and vampire. Finally, Zafina spoke. Okay, we'll do it your way, for now. But Jihyuk, you need to understand, I'm not going to change my mind. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I'm still going to want forever with you. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Jihyuk said. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. For now, let's just focus on tonight. And they did. They made love slowly, carefully, Jihyuk constantly aware of his strength and the fragility of her human body. Zafina discovering what it meant to be intimate with someone who had centuries of experience but who treated her like she was the first and only person he had ever wanted. It was beautiful and terrifying and perfect, and when they finally fell asleep, well, when she fell asleep and he held her, watching her breathe, they both felt like maybe, just maybe, they could make this impossible thing work. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Zafina enrolled in a night program at Yonsei, studying for her degree in classes that ran from sunset to midnight. She would come home to the mansion and find Jihyuk waiting for her, always with some new surprise. A painting he had finished, a book he thought she would like, a piece of jewelry from some century past that he wanted her to have. They traveled together at night, exploring Seoul's hidden places, the palaces that opened for moonlight tours, the night markets in Dongdaemun, the quiet temples where they could walk without fear of the sun. Jihyuk showed her his Korea, the one that existed after dark, and she showed him the modern world through her eyes, teaching him about social media and contemporary music and all the ways the world had changed even in just the last few decades. But there was always the awareness of time passing. Zafina would catch Jihyuk staring at her sometimes with an expression of such longing and sadness that it broke her heart. She knew what he was thinking, that every day that passed was one day closer to the time when age would start to show on her face, when the gap between them would become visible to anyone who looked. One night, about 2 months after her return, Zafina woke up in the middle of the night to find Jihyuk's side of the bed empty. She found him in his study, surrounded by old journals and photographs, looking at pictures of his human life from 300 years ago. "Can't sleep?" she asked, even though she knew he never slept. "I was thinking about the last time I watched someone I love grow older," Jihyuk said quietly. "Mina. Every day I saw her changing, aging, and I stayed the same. She used to joke about it at first, but toward the end, I could see it bothered her. She would look in the mirror and see wrinkles forming, gray hair appearing, and then she would look at me. Still young, still unchanged, and I could see the distance growing between us." Zafina sat down next to him. How did she die? It was the first time she had asked directly. Jihyuk was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Hunters. Vampire hunters. They found out what I was and they came for me. Mina tried to protect me and they killed her. She died because she loved me, because I wasn't strong enough to protect her." "That's not your fault," Zafina said firmly. "Isn't it? I'm the one who made the choice to marry her knowing what I was. I'm the one who put her in danger just by existing in her life. And I'm doing the exact same thing with you." "No," Zafina said. "You're not. Because I know what you are, and I'm choosing this anyway. Mina didn't have all the information. I do. I'm going into this with my eyes open, Jihyuk. Stop trying to protect me from my own choices. I'm trying to protect you from me, Jihyuk said, and his voice was full of 300 years of self-loathing. Well, stop it, Zafina said. I don't need protection from you. I need you to trust that I'm strong enough to handle whatever comes. I need you to believe that I love you enough to face the challenges instead of running from them. Jihyuk looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. You're right. I'm sorry. I keep seeing you as fragile, as someone who needs to be protected, but you're not. You're the strongest person I've ever known. You faced down a gangster, confronted a vampire, and chose to come back even knowing all the complications. That takes more courage than I've shown in 3 centuries. Thank you, Zafina said. Now come back to bed. Or to not sleep in bed, whatever you do. I'm cold without you. They returned to the bedroom and Jihyuk held her close. And for that night at least, the fear of the future took a back seat to the reality of the present. But the universe has a way of forcing decisions. 3 months into their renewed relationship, 6 months after Zafina first came to the mansion, everything changed. Started with a phone call. Zafina was in class when her phone buzzed with an emergency call from Lagos. Her mother had collapsed. The tumor was back, more aggressive than before, and the doctors were saying there wasn't much time. She left class immediately, called Jihyuk from the car. I have to go to Lagos. Tonight. The first flight I can get. I'll arrange it, Jihyuk said immediately. Private jet. You'll be there in 12 hours. I'll. Come with me, Zafina interrupted. Silence on the other end. Then, Zafina, I can't. The sun. We'll figure it out. UV-protected windows in the plane. You stay in hotel rooms during the day. I need you, Jihyuk. My mother is dying, and I need you with me. Another long silence. Then, okay, I'll come. Give me 2 hours to make arrangements. They flew to Lagos together, Jihyuk in a specially arranged plane with windows that blocked UV light, sleeping in a coffin in the cargo hold during the bright African day, rising only at night to be with her. They stayed for 2 weeks, and Zafina watched her mother deteriorate despite every medical intervention, every prayer, every desperate hope. On the 14th night, her mother asked to speak with Jihyuk alone. Zafina waited outside the hospital room, anxious and confused, while her mother and her vampire boyfriend had a conversation she wasn't privy to. When Jihyuk emerged, his expression was strange, thoughtful, changed somehow. What did she say? Zafina demanded. She asked me if I loved you, Jihyuk said. I told her yes. She asked me what I was. She's perceptive, your mother, and I told her the truth. Everything. You told her you're a vampire? Zafina asked, shocked. She's dying, Zafina. She deserved the truth about who her daughter has chosen to love. Jihyuk took her hands. She asked me to take care of you, to make sure you're never alone. And then she asked me something else. What? She asked me if I was going to turn you, make you like me. Zafina's breath caught. What did you say? I told her I wouldn't, that I couldn't curse you to my existence. And do you know what she said? Tell me. She said that watching your child die is the worst thing a parent can experience. She said she's grateful she won't have to watch you grow old and die, because she'll be gone before that. But she also said that if you found someone who could promise you'd never be alone, someone who could give you forever, then maybe that wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a gift. Tears streamed down Zafina's face. She gave us her blessing. She gave us her perspective, Jihyuk corrected gently. She made me see that I've been thinking about this wrong. I've been seeing immortality as a curse because it's been lonely. But it doesn't have to be lonely anymore. Not if you're with me. Are you saying? I'm saying I'm still scared. I'm still terrified of taking your humanity away. But I'm starting to understand that keeping you human isn't protecting you. It's just postponing the inevitable loss. And maybe there's a way to do this that honors both your choice and your humanity. Zafina's mother passed away 3 days later, peacefully, with Zafina holding one hand and Jihyuk holding the other. At the funeral, Zafina was surrounded by family members who loved her, friends who supported her, and a vampire who had faced the sunlight. Carefully, protected, but still, to be by her side. They returned to Seoul a week later, both changed by the experience. Zafina was grieving but also strangely at peace. Her mother had lived a full life. She had seen her daughter happy. She had given her blessing to a love that transcended normal boundaries. It was enough. Jihyuk was quieter than usual, more contemplative. He spent long hours in his study, researching, reading, making phone calls to contacts that Zafina didn't even know he had. She didn't push him, giving him space to process whatever he was working through. Finally, 1 month after they returned from Lagos, Jihyuk asked her to meet him in the greenhouse. It was midnight, and the roses were in full bloom, their scent heavy in the air. He stood among them looking nervous, an expression she had never seen on him before. "I've been doing research," he said without preamble, "about the turning process, about what it means and how it's done and what we can do to make it as safe as possible." Zafina's heart started racing. "Jihyuk, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I spoke with other vampires. Yes, there are others, though we're rare and we stay hidden. I learned that the turning process is dangerous. Many humans don't survive it, but there are ways to increase the chances of success. And I've been thinking about your mother's words, about the difference between a curse and a gift." He walked toward her, taking her hands in his cold ones. "Zafina, I can't give you children. I can't give you daylight. I can't give you a normal life. But I can give you forever. I can give you centuries to see the world, to learn everything there is to learn, to experience things that most humans never dream of. I can give you a love that doesn't end when your body fails. And if that's truly what you want, if you've thought about it carefully and you're absolutely certain, then I'm willing to try." "Are you asking me to marry you or to become a vampire?" Zafina asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "Both," Jihyuk said. He pulled out a ring, the same ring he had shown her months ago, his mother's ring from 300 years past. "Marry me, be my wife. And when you're ready, not today, not tomorrow, but when you're absolutely certain, I'll turn you. We'll have forever together." Zafina looked at the ring, at Jihyuk, at the roses blooming impossibly around them. She thought about everything they had been through, the manipulation and the lies at the beginning, the trust that had grown despite everything, the love that had somehow flourished in the darkness. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it. Yes to marriage, and yes to forever, and yes to choosing you every day for the rest of my very long life." Jihyuk slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting 300 years for her specifically. Then he kissed her, and in that kiss was a promise of eternity. They were married 1 month later in a small ceremony at midnight in the greenhouse. Just the two of them, a priest who owed Jihyuk a favor and didn't ask too many questions, and the roses as witnesses. Zafina wore a white dress that Jihyuk had commissioned from a designer who specialized in creating clothes for night weddings. Jihyuk wore traditional Korean hanbok in black and gold, looking like a groom from another century, which he was. "I take you, Min Jihyuk, to be my husband," Zafina said, her voice steady and sure. "In darkness and in light, in life and in death, in humanity and in whatever comes after. Forever. I take you, Zafina Mensa, to be my wife," Jihyuk said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "I promise to love you in every form you take. I promise to stand by you through every challenge. I promise to make every night of forever worth the daylight you're giving up. Forever." They exchanged rings, kissed as husband and wife, and began their eternal life together. But there was still the question of when. When would she make the final choice? When would she leave her humanity behind? They decided together that she would finish her degree first. She would have the achievement of graduating, of proving that she could complete what she started as a human. Then they would consider the turning. The year that followed was the happiest of Zafina's life. She threw herself into her studies, determined to graduate with honors. She learned to navigate the world as the wife of a vampire, which came with its own unique challenges. She had to explain to friends and family why her husband never appeared during the day, why they couldn't have a traditional wedding reception, why she had suddenly become obsessed with UV-protecting window treatments. Most people thought he was just extremely photosensitive, a rare medical condition. Only a few people knew the truth, and those few Jihyuk had carefully vetted to ensure they could be trusted. Zafina also began training. If she was going to become a vampire, she needed to prepare mentally and physically. Jihyuk taught her about vampire history, about their strengths and weaknesses, about the political structure of their hidden society. He introduced her to other vampires carefully in controlled situations so she could see that not all of them were like him. Some were cruel, some were kind, some were simply trying to survive in a world that would destroy them if it knew they existed. She learned to fight because Jihyuk insisted that she needed to be able to defend herself. She learned about blood sources, ethical ones. Jihyuk was careful to emphasize blood banks and willing donors, never killing unless absolutely necessary for survival. She learned about the hunger, about what it felt like to need blood more than air, more than anything. It's like being constantly thirsty, Jihyuk explained. Imagine the worst thirst you've ever experienced, and then multiply it by 1,000. That's what every moment feels like. You learn to control it, to function despite it, but it never truly goes away. That sounds terrible, Zafina said. It is, Jihyuk agreed. But it becomes background noise eventually. And when you're with someone you love, when you have purpose and meaning in your existence, it's manageable. I won't lie and tell you it's easy, but I will promise you that I'll be there every step of the way to help you through it. Drop a like if you're emotional right now, because this next part is going to hit differently. And if you're not already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that button and turn on notifications. Now let's see what choice Zafina makes. Graduation day arrived on a cool evening in December. Zafina walked across the stage in her cap and gown, accepting her degree in international business with honors. And in the audience, hidden in the back where the lights were dimmer, Jihyuk watched with pride shining in his eyes. After the ceremony, they went back to the mansion, and Zafina changed out of her graduation clothes into comfortable jeans and a sweater. They sat together in the greenhouse, their place, the place where so many important moments had happened, and Jihyuk asked the question that had been hanging between them for a year. Are you ready? Zafina looked at him, at this beautiful, complicated, eternal creature who had become her everything. She thought about her mother's words, about the blessing she had given. She thought about the life she had lived so far, 25 years of joy and struggle and growth. She thought about the life ahead of her, centuries of possibility, of adventure, of love that wouldn't end when her body failed. I'm ready, she said. Turn me, make me like you, give me forever. Jihyuk cupped her face in his hands. This will hurt. The transformation is agony, your body dying and being remade into something new. Some people don't survive it. I need you to understand that. I understand, Zafina said. I trust you. I trust us. If at any point you want me to stop, if you change your mind, I won't, Zafina interrupted. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Do it, Jihyuk. Make me yours forever. He kissed her one last time as a human, gentle and reverent. Then he moved to her neck, his fangs extending, and he bit down. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Not the sharp sting of a bite, but something deeper, more fundamental. She felt her blood being drained, felt her life flowing out of her and into him, felt herself dying in the most literal sense. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't make sound. She wanted to fight, but her body wouldn't respond. Just when she thought she couldn't bear another second, Jihyuk pulled away. He bit his own wrist, tearing the flesh open, and pressed it to her lips. Drink, he commanded. Drink and live. She drank, and his blood was nothing like human blood. It was cold and powerful and electric, and it burned as it went down her throat, as it spread through her dying body, as it began the process of transformation. Her heart, which had been slowing, stopped completely. Her lungs, which had been gasping, went still. For a moment, an eternal, terrifying moment, she was dead, truly dead. And then she came back, but different, changed. Her heart didn't beat, but she was aware of every molecule in her body rearranging itself, becoming something new. Her senses exploded. She could hear Jihyuk's breathing, even though he didn't need to breathe. She could smell the roses with an intensity that was almost painful. She could see in the darkness as clearly as if it were day. The hunger hit her like a physical blow. Suddenly she understood what Jihyuk had meant about constant thirst. She was so hungry she could barely think, barely function. All she could focus on was the need for blood. "I know," Jihyuk said, holding her as she convulsed. "I know it hurts. I know you're hungry, but you're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together." He had prepared for this. He had blood bags from the blood bank and he helped her drink, teaching her how to feed without losing control. The first bag tasted like heaven and hell combined, satisfying the hunger but also intensifying it, making her want more, always more. "Slowly," Jihyuk instructed. "You're still learning control. Too much too fast and you'll make yourself sick." It took hours for the initial transformation to stabilize. Hours of pain and hunger and Jihyuk's steady presence, guiding her through every moment. When it was finally over, when she could think clearly again, Zafina looked at herself in a mirror and saw nothing. No reflection. She had truly become what he was. "How do you feel?" Jihyuk asked. Zafina turned to look at him, seeing him with her new vampire eyes. He was beautiful in a way she couldn't have perceived before, radiant with the power that flowed through his undead veins. And she could sense it, the bond between them deeper now, more fundamental. They were the same species now, partners in immortality. "I feel powerful," she said, and her voice sounded different even to her own ears, richer, more resonant, and hungry, so hungry. "That will fade with time," Jihyuk promised. "The first months are the hardest, but I'll teach you everything I know. We have forever to learn together." Zafina walked to the greenhouse window and looked out at the night. Everything was so much clearer now, so much more vivid. She could see individual leaves on trees hundreds of meters away. She could hear conversations from the road below the mansion. She could smell the earth and the fog and the life that pulsed through the forest. "I can't go out in the sun anymore," she said, the reality of what she had given up hitting her. "No," Jihyuk agreed, "but you have the moon and the stars and the night, and you have me, forever." She turned to face him, and she smiled with fangs that were still strange in her mouth. Forever sounds perfect. The first year of her vampire life was challenging in ways Zafina hadn't anticipated. Learning to control the hunger was the hardest part. Every human she passed smelled like a feast, and resisting the urge to feed was a constant battle. Jihyuk was patient, teaching her techniques he had developed over 3 centuries, introducing her to ethical blood sources, staying by her side through every struggle. They traveled together, exploring the world at night. They visited every continent, seeing places that Jihyuk had known for centuries and experiencing them fresh through Zafina's new perspective. They stood at the Great Wall of China under the full moon. They walked through the Louvre in Paris during a special midnight exhibition. They watched the northern lights in Iceland, where the winter nights lasted 20 hours and they could be outside for most of the day. Zafina also discovered that being a vampire came with unexpected benefits. She was stronger than she had ever been, faster, more resilient. She could learn languages in weeks instead of years, her enhanced memory making everything easier. She took up painting, learning from Jihyuk, and discovered a talent she had never known she had. But there were also losses. She couldn't see her family during the day anymore. She had to fake her own death, a car accident carefully staged, so that her relatives in Nigeria wouldn't ask too many questions about why she never aged. She could never have children, never experience pregnancy, never pass on her genes to the next generation. Those losses hurt, some days more than others. But every time the grief threatened to overwhelm her, Jihyuk was there, understanding in a way that only someone who had lived through the same losses could be. "I still miss the sun sometimes," he admitted one night as they sat on the mansion's roof, watching the stars. "Even after 300 years. I dream about it, the warmth on my face, the way everything looks in daylight." But then I wake up next to you, and I remember that I'd rather have you in darkness than face the sun alone. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me, Zafina said, leaning against him. I've had 300 years to work on my romantic speeches, Jihyuk said. I should be good at them by now. They laughed together, and in that moment, Zafina knew she had made the right choice. Yes, she had given up daylight and mortality and all the normal milestones of human life. But she had gained something infinitely more precious. A love that would never end, a partnership that would last for centuries, a future that stretched out before her like an endless night full of stars. 5 years passed, then 10. Zafina adapted to her vampire existence with a grace that sometimes surprised even Jihyuk. She had become elegant in her immortality, learning to move through the world with the quiet confidence of a predator who knew exactly what she was. She no longer struggled with the hunger the way she had in the beginning. It was still there, always there, but it had become manageable, a background hum instead of a roaring demand. They had developed a beautiful life together. During the nights, they ran a consulting business that helped international companies navigate cross-cultural partnerships. Jihyuk's centuries of experience combined with Zafina's modern education made them formidable. They worked from home mostly, the mansion having been updated with all the latest technology. A strange fusion of ancient architecture and cutting-edge equipment. They had also become part of the vampire community in ways Jihyuk had never been before Zafina. He had isolated himself for so long, but she pushed him to connect with others of their kind. They hosted gatherings at the mansion, midnight salons where vampires from across Asia would come to discuss philosophy, art, politics, and the challenges of existing in an increasingly monitored modern world. Zafina had even started a support network for newly turned vampires, helping them through the difficult first years with the kind of compassion and understanding that came from recent experience. Jihyuk watched her work with these struggling new vampires and felt his heart, metaphorically speaking, swell with pride. But as their 10th anniversary approached, something changed. They were in Tokyo, attending a gathering of elder vampires, when Zafina encountered someone who would alter the course of their eternal existence. Her name was Keiko, and she was over 500 years old, one of the oldest vampires in Asia. She had striking features and eyes that had seen the rise and fall of empires. When she was introduced to Zafina, she studied her with an intensity that made even Jihyuk uncomfortable. "You're different from most new vampires," Keiko said in perfect English, though they were speaking Japanese moments before. "Most struggle with the loss of humanity for decades. But you seem at peace." "I chose this," Zafina replied simply. "I knew what I was giving up, and I knew what I was gaining. That makes all the difference." Keiko smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her ancient face. "Walk with me. I want to show you something." Zafina glanced at Jihyuk, who nodded, though she could sense his curiosity and slight concern through the bond they shared. She followed Keiko out onto a balcony that overlooked Tokyo's glittering nightscape, the city alive with lights and movement even at 3 in the morning. "Do you ever regret it?" Keiko asked without preamble. "Giving up your human life?" "Sometimes," Zafina admitted. "Mostly I miss the small things. Coffee, I can't taste it anymore. Music sounds different now. My hearing is so acute that I pick up every imperfection. And children. I see human children playing, and I remember that I'll never have that." "But," Keiko prompted, sensing there was more. "But I have something most humans never experience. I have certainty. I know that when I go home tonight, Jihyuk will be there. I know that when I wake tomorrow evening, he'll still love me. I know that 1,000 years from now, we'll still be together." How many humans can say that about their relationships? Keiko was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I was turned against my will, 500 years ago, by a vampire who thought I was beautiful and wanted to keep me forever. I spent the first century hating what I had become, the second century learning to accept it, the third century finding purpose, and the last 2 centuries trying to help others avoid the pain I went through." She turned to face Zafina directly. "There are humans out there right now being turned against their will. Vampires who are lonely or cruel or simply don't understand the weight of what they're doing. We have no laws, no structure, no way to hold our kind accountable. But you understand both worlds. You remember being human well enough to have empathy. And you're strong enough as a vampire to command respect. What are you asking me? Zafina asked, though she was beginning to understand. Help me create something. A council. A governing body for vampires in Asia. Rules about turning humans, about feeding, about how we interact with the human world. We need someone like you. Someone who chose this life and can help others make informed choices instead of having immortality forced upon them. Zafina felt something ignite in her chest. Purpose. Direction. A way to take her own experience and use it to help others. I'd need to discuss it with Jihyuk. Of course, Keiko said. But think about it. We have eternity, yes, but that doesn't mean we should waste it. We can make our existence mean something. That conversation changed everything. Zafina and Jihyuk spent weeks discussing it, weighing the implications. Starting a vampire council would mean stepping into politics, making enemies, putting themselves in danger. But it would also mean creating structure in a community that desperately needed it. What do you want to do? Jihyuk asked one night as they lay together in their bed. The question he always asked when they faced important decisions. I want to try, Zafina said. I want to use these centuries I have to make a difference. You spent 300 years hiding from the world. Jihyuk, I don't want to hide. I want to engage with it, change it, make it better for our kind and for humans. Jihyuk was quiet, and she could feel his internal struggle through their bond. Fear warring with pride. The desire to keep her safe conflicting with his knowledge that she was right. Finally, he said, then we do it together. We build this council. We create change. But we do it as partners, watching each other's backs, protecting each other. Always, Zafina agreed. They spent the next year laying the groundwork. It was delicate work. Vampires were territorial by nature, suspicious of authority, resistant to change. But slowly, carefully, they built alliances. Jihyuk's age and resources gave them credibility. Zafina's compassion and modern perspective gave them relevance. Keiko's wisdom and network gave them reach. They established the Council of Shadows, with representatives from every major vampire community in Asia. They created rules about ethical feeding, about turning humans only with full informed consent, about resolving disputes without attracting human attention. It wasn't perfect. Enforcing rules among immortal beings was nearly impossible, but it was a start. But success came with a price. They made enemies among the vampires who preferred chaos, who saw the council as a threat to their freedom. And one enemy in particular would nearly destroy everything they had built. His name was Nakamura, and he was a 300-year-old vampire who had built his power on fear and violence. He ran an underground network that kidnapped humans, turned them without consent, and sold them to the highest bidder. The Council of Shadows was a direct threat to his business, and he wasn't going to allow it to continue. The attack came on their 15th anniversary. Zafina and Jihyuk were at the mansion, celebrating quietly, when Nakamura's forces struck. 20 vampires, all of them ruthless, all of them willing to kill to protect their way of life. The battle was brutal. Jihyuk fought with the efficiency of someone who had survived 3 centuries through skill and cunning. Zafina fought with the desperation of someone who had too much to lose. They were outnumbered, but they had the advantage of fighting in their own territory, in a mansion Jihyuk had spent centuries fortifying. But even advantages have limits. Zafina took a silver blade to the ribs, the poison immediately flooding her system. She collapsed, gasping, as Jihyuk screamed her name. He fought his way to her side, lifting her even as enemies closed in around them. Go! Zafina managed to say through the pain. Save yourself. Never, Jihyuk said fiercely. We face this together or not at all. They were surrounded. Silver weapons pointed at them from every direction. Nakamura stepped forward, a cruel smile on his face. This is what happens when you try to change things. The old ways survive because they're strong. Your council dies tonight, along with both of you. But he had made one critical miscalculation. He had attacked the home of 2 vampires who were beloved by their community. And in the 15 years since forming the council, Zafina and Jihyuk had built more than rules and structure. They had built loyalty. The mansion's windows exploded inward as reinforcements arrived. Keiko led the charge, bringing with her 50 vampires loyal to the council. The tide turned instantly. Nakamura's forces found themselves outnumbered and outmatched. Nakamura himself tried to flee, but Jihyuk was faster. Even carrying Zafina, even with his own injuries, he caught the older vampire and brought him down. "You tried to kill my wife," Jihyuk said, his voice cold with a fury that Zafina had never heard before. "You attacked our home. You threatened everything we've built. Give me one reason why I shouldn't end you right now." "Because you're better than that," Zafina said weakly from his arms. The silver was spreading through her system, and she could feel herself slipping away. "Because if you kill him, you become what we're fighting against. Let the council judge him. Let there be justice, not revenge." Jihyuk looked down at her pale face and pain-filled eyes, and she could see the internal war raging inside him. Every instinct demanded vengeance. But her words, her belief in the system they had built together, held him back. "Fine," he said finally. "The council will decide your fate, Nakamura. But if my wife dies because of you, no law will protect you from me." Keiko approached, examining Zafina's wound with experienced eyes. "The silver is spreading fast. We need to get it out and give her fresh blood immediately, or she won't survive." They worked quickly, efficiently, removing the silver and flooding Zafina's system with blood from multiple donors. It was touch and go for hours, Jihyuk holding her hand the entire time, refusing to leave her side even when Keiko suggested he should rest and heal his own wounds. Finally, as dawn approached, Zafina's eyes opened. The first thing she saw was Jihyuk's face, streaked with tears, blood tears, the only kind vampires could cry. "You're crying," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "I thought I was going to lose you," Jihyuk said, his voice breaking. "After everything, after 300 years alone, after finding you, after having 15 years together, I thought it was going to end, and I realized that even eternity isn't long enough. I need more time with you. I need forever and then some." "You have me," Zafina said, smiling weakly. "Forever and then some. That's the deal, remember?" He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, and she tasted his blood tears on her lips. Around them, the other vampires quietly left the room, giving them privacy. "I was scared," Jihyuk admitted when they were alone. "For the first time in 300 years, I was genuinely terrified. Not of dying, I've faced that many times, but of existing without you, of going back to that loneliness, that emptiness. I don't think I could survive it now. You've ruined me for solitude, Zafina Mensa." "Good," Zafina said, "because you're stuck with me, for better or worse, in darkness and in whatever comes after. That's what we promised each other." They spent the next week recovering, both physically and emotionally. The attack had shaken them, forcing them to confront the reality that even immortals could lose everything in an instant. But it had also proven something important. They had built something real, something worth fighting for, something that others were willing to defend. The Council of Shadows held a trial for Nakamura and his followers. It was the first formal proceeding of its kind in vampire history, at least in Asia. The accused were given a chance to defend themselves. Evidence was presented. Arguments were made. And finally, judgment was rendered. Nakamura was sentenced to isolation. 50 years imprisoned in a sealed chamber, alone with his thoughts, a punishment that for a social predator was worse than death. His followers who had committed crimes against humans were turned over to human authorities, their supernatural abilities suppressed by a combination of silver poisoning and blood deprivation that rendered them almost human until they could face human justice. It wasn't perfect. The vampire community was divided on whether the punishment was too harsh or too lenient. But it established precedent. It showed that there could be consequences for actions, that the council had power and was willing to use it. "We did it," Zafina said to Jihyuk as they watched the chamber being sealed with Nakamura inside. "We actually created a functioning government." "You did it," Jihyuk corrected. I just followed your lead. We did it together, Zafina insisted. Like everything else. 20 years passed after the attack. Then 30. Time moved differently when you were immortal. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. But for Zafina and Jihyuk, every moment remained precious because they spent it together. The Council of Shadows expanded beyond Asia, forming connections with vampire communities in Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Zafina became known throughout the vampire world as a voice of reason and compassion, someone who understood both the vampire need for survival and the human right to autonomy. Jihyuk remained her partner in everything, content to work behind the scenes, using his resources and experience to support her work. He had found his purpose not in leading but in empowering the woman he loved to change their world. They returned to the mansion often, to their greenhouse full of roses that had long since spread to cover entire walls. They had learned to cultivate them year-round, creating a perpetual garden that bloomed in defiance of the darkness. On their 40th anniversary, 40 years since Zafina had first arrived at the mansion as a desperate student trying to pay off a debt, they stood together among the roses, looking back on everything they had experienced. Do you ever regret it? Jihyuk asked, echoing Keiko's question from decades before. Giving up your human life for this? Zafina thought about it seriously. She thought about the losses, her mother, her human family who had died or aged beyond recognition, the children she would never have, the sunrises she would never see again. The losses were real and they still hurt sometimes. But then she thought about what she had gained. The love of a man who had waited 300 years to find her. The ability to make a real difference in the world, to help her kind become better, more ethical. The knowledge that she had centuries ahead of her to continue learning, growing, experiencing everything the world had to offer. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. This life isn't what I imagined when I was a human student in Seoul. It's stranger, harder, more complicated. But it's also more beautiful and meaningful than anything I could have dreamed. I chose you, Jihyuk. I chose this, and I would choose it again and again in every lifetime. Jihyuk pulled her close, and they stood together in their garden of impossible roses, two immortals who had found in each other the very thing they thought they'd lost, home. I love you, he said simply. For 340 years, I wandered alone. For 40 years, I've walked beside you. And if I have another 1,000 years, I will spend every one of them grateful that a stubborn, brave, beautiful woman decided a vampire was worth loving. I love you too, Zafina said. Forever and then some. They kissed among the roses as midnight turned to dawn, and somewhere in the world, the sun rose on another day they wouldn't see. But they had the night, and they had each other, and for two vampires in love, that was more than enough. It was everything. Next time, stay curious, stay passionate, and keep believing in impossible love.